Madam Chair, the reason why side opposition has lost this debate is because through all of their two speeches, they have never clearly shown us why the government of Singapore should not prioritize the choices and the ability of a Singaporean to lead a meaningful life, Madam Speaker, over that of a married couple. And really, when the trade-off really is that for a married couple to get that HDB flat maybe a couple of weeks, or maybe 2 or 3 months, or at max, or 1 year later. What am I going to talk to you about today? I'm going to firstly deal with this idea of scarcity of resources. Like, is it really as bad as they make it sound? Secondly, I'm going to talk about why we think it's important to look at the rights of these individuals and what are the benefits that come out of our policy. And thirdly, I'm going to talk about why we think the status quo doesn't even really work in the first place, right? So let's firstly look at the scarcity of resources, because that's pretty much the only argument that they have. Like, we have few resources, so we shouldn't give them. We have few resources, we shouldn't give them. But we had a number of responses to these, and we don't think they sufficiently dealt with this. Firstly, we told you, Madam Speaker, that, we can go ahead and, for example, reclaim land. And this is something that Singapore has already been doing. Like, you can go ahead and build more islands if so need be. Secondly, we told you, Madam Speaker, that when you look at these HDBs, they're probably around 25 to 30 floors. And if you really want to increase their housing capacity, sure, go ahead with vertical, increasing the number of floors, Madam Speaker, increasing housing space. We don't think it's too difficult. Thirdly, we tell you, Madam Speaker, Singapore has extremely large limits of what percentage of the land needs to be under forest cover, and it's a lot higher than most cities in the world. If you really think there's such a big shortage, then why don't you go ahead and reduce that percentage, Madam Speaker, and in fact go ahead and build more HDBs. We tell you they had absolutely no response to all of these ideas, Madam Speaker. We tell you moreover, Madam Speaker, if you really think that even these are not enough, why don't you go ahead and bite the bullet and reduce the number of foreigners coming into Singapore, Madam Speaker, and in fact going ahead and hogging your housing resources, Madam Speaker. That's something that they need to respond to. But the bigger question here, Madam Speaker, is that even if we assume, not conceding that Singapore is clearly not able to do so, but let's assume for a moment that yes, there is some form of scarcity. Should we really go ahead and compromise on the rights of these individuals who really want to live alone? And we say firmly no. Why is that? Please sit down. We told you already in our two speeches how a lot of these people have started earning at an early age, say at 20 to 25. And this is perfectly in line with Singaporean goals and Singaporean ideals, Madam Speaker. In as much as they want to talk about things like housing, the Singaporean government wanting families to live in houses, the bigger thing that Singapore prides itself on is its economic clout, is its economic might, and the fact that it is able to develop itself economically within a span of 50 years. What does that mean? In every developed nation, people do tend to postpone marriage, A. B, they also choose to live independently, Madam Speaker, because that is a part of self-actualization for these individuals. They believe that they can only lead a meaningful life if they are allowed to feel this level of independence, when they have their own income stream, when they're living alone in an HDB, maybe with their friends, Madam Speaker. And we think that's what the government should prioritize. They should be responsive to the needs of Singaporeans, rather than just simply turning a blind eye and saying that, oh, you know what, we don't care about you because we still need to get in more foreigners, and apparently we just won't cut down a few extra trees in order to make houses. We think that's extremely uncompromising from the Singaporean government. So we think that's the primary benefit. But the second thing we told you, Madam Speaker, which is something they completely refused to respond to, was the idea of how we in fact go ahead and reduce rent prices, Madam Speaker. And this is where we improve society for Singaporeans in itself, Madam Speaker. We talked about how when in fact people are allowed to go ahead and own HDBs at a younger age, what that means is that by the time they're 30 or 35, they can go ahead and, for example, go and own a condo or some form of private property and give these sort of HDBs out for rent. And we think that's what reduces the HDB rental prices, Madam Speaker, which is also something that they aspire for. No, sit down. But we tell you, Madam Speaker, their response to this was, but HDB prices will go up. We'd say firstly, Madam Speaker, we've seen how extremely adept the Singaporean government has been at regulating HDB prices. We think they can go ahead with further economic policies to go ahead and do that. But we say secondly, Madam Speaker, even if HDB prices do rise slightly, we think two individuals in a married relationship do have a greater income stream than a single person, and obviously do have greater access if that's their biggest quibble. But thirdly, Madam Speaker, we tell you that if it really means that prices become slightly higher, or if it really means that these individuals have to wait for 1 year longer before they get their HDB flats, then all that means is that these individuals will have to stay with their parents for just a bit longer, and that's in fact in line with what this policy was for. It was for ensuring that people go ahead and stay with their parents, Madam Speaker, and we don't think that this is a very unreasonable thing to ask of Singaporeans. So before I move on, Imran.
So why do you want the Singapore government to turn away your entire team when they've already achieved an intricate balance between like the singles' interest, the interest of married couples, and the interest of foreigners as well? Like, why is this so necessary to tell you guys?
But we don't agree that they reached this sort of balance, right? That's why we're proposing this motion. We don't think they've been able to provide enough housing for individuals who want to exercise this choice of right. So let's look at their stance, right? They said that, and this is where we look at the status quo. Does it really work? And they said that, we really need to prioritize resources because it promotes marriage. Like, people apparently will not get married if they're denied the right to stay in a house. Like, seriously, is that even believable, Madam Speaker? We really think that people make a choice of marriage because of the fact that they love themselves, because of the fact that they love each other, because of the fact that they realize that these are the people whom they want to go ahead and start a family with, have kids with, Madam Speaker. They probably met them over work, or probably met them during university. They probably, in fact, in Singapore, people have relationships for a prolonged period of time, say 3 to 5 years, before they choose to go ahead and get married, Madam Speaker. So we think this is a meaningful choice, which is clearly not predicated on the idea of whether or not you can own an independent house, Madam Speaker. And we tell you, if anything, if they, given the fact they've been in a relationship for so long, if in fact the only thing it means is that they're going to get an HDB flat 1 year later or 2 years later, then sure, let them go ahead and postpone their marriage maybe 1 or 2 years later, Madam Speaker. But we still think it ensures that we still promote familial relationships within Singapore, and at the same time we promote the interests of Singaporeans, something that they absolutely refuse to deal with, Madam Speaker. We tell you at the end of the day, it's extremely important to look after the rights of Singaporeans. We refuse to buy the notion that people marry each other just because they're going to get a flat. We think they do have other alternatives. At worst, they can stay with their parents, which ensures that there's filial piety. We're extremely proud to propose.